All right, let's go. We are on episode 4 today. I'm going to be talking about perfectionism, the problems with perfectionism. But before I do that, I want to start giving you all just some glimpses inside my head and giving you some tips. So here is a tip of a day that has nothing to do with perfectionism. I was blow drying my hair, and you know how if you have long hair, your hair gets stuck in the brush. And it was time for me to clean out my brush. So I cleaned out my brush. And do you know what I do with my hair? I give it to the animals. So I will take my bundle of hair and I know that birds want to use it for their nests. So I walk it outside and I put it in a tree and I hope and pray that a bird is going to use it for its nest. So maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe that's just a fun tip, some fun knowledge that you may want to do with me. All right, so let's get started. Let's first just identify if you may be a perfectionist. Okay. I have interviewed a lot of perfectionists. I work with perfectionists as my one-on-one clients, also in group, also in breath work. And the way to identify if you are a perfectionist, first of all, I want you to realize it's not a diagnosis. Now, some of you may have gone to therapy, some of you may have had, therapists say this about you, like you're a perfectionist, but I really think it's important to not identify with the diagnosis of perfectionism. And if you've taken any type of personality test, like the Enneagram, right? There's like a perfectionist one. I want you to not identify that with your personality because personality is changeable. All this is a way of thinking that has come from patterns in your life in order to keep you safe. So, just to think about what perfectionism is. It's essentially you deciding that you want your life to be perfect. You want to do things perfectly. And you really have like this high standard of excellence. Okay. So you've got like maybe big goals, big expectations for yourself and others. And what it necessarily leads to is a lot of anxiety and then a lot of procrastination. Because what happens is you have this way that you want to do things, but you don't necessarily have the skill yet or the ability, or you get stuck in overwhelm. So I just want you to think about perfectionism is basically like this idealistic version of life. And it's a lot of pressure because typically, if you look at every single area of life, your marriage, your health, your business, your family, your finances, like essentially what perfectionism says is like we need to be perfect at all. We need to have it all together 100% all the time. Okay. So those are just some of the ways to perceive yourself as a perfectionist. And I'm going to give you the seven, I call them negatives, the seven negatives that come from perfectionism because some of you may not even realize that it is a negative. And I remember this because when I was applying for jobs on my interview, like on my resume, I would put I'm a perfectionist. I have attention to detail. And I am a Virgo rising. So my Virgo rising is like the way that if you want to look at your astrology, you can. If you've got Virgo in there, if you've got Capricorn in there, if you've got Taurus, you might have some tendencies of like you want things to be a certain way. Okay. And that kind of is perfectionism, like my way or the highway, or you think that there's a quote unquote right way to do things. So I definitely have that tendency. However, I used to think of it as a positive quality, but for me, the way it would show up is like I thought I was the only one. Like when I worked jobs, I thought I was the only one that could do it the right way. Right. I didn't think anybody else could do it the right way. So it caused a lot of drama in my relationships. And so maybe you might want to self reflect on this on your relationship, your marriage, the way you treat your kids, right? If you're like, think that they're supposed to do things a certain way to a certain degree, right? That might be just causing you more stress and anxiety. I'll give you an example. Most people that I know that I coach or I ask them this question have a very strong opinion about this one topic. And this one topic is the way to load the dishwasher. Most people have a thought that like there's a right way to do it. And what I've just decided is not to have any drama about how to load the dishwasher. Now my husband might think that I'm doing it wrong, but I just don't care because I don't want to care about that. Okay? So maybe there's something like that in your life. Now, there's definitely very specific things that I get like all like get my panties in a wad about, but the dishwasher is not one of them. All right. So let's jump into the problems with perfectionism. And I came up with 7 of them for this episode. I promise you, I will have more episodes on perfectionism because it just always keeps coming up. But let's just start with number 1. Number 1 is all or nothing thinking. All right. So all or nothing thinking is like black and white thinking, this or that. And so a lot of times the way I see this said by my clients is if I can't do it perfectly, I might as well not do it at all. Okay. And if this actually starts with things like, let's say you are wanting to start a website for your business, brand new first website. I see so many clients get stuck in this of like, I need to get a website made. It needs to be done perfectly. Like it needs to fully represent who I am. And what I think is better than having this like beautiful website is just getting it done to where somebody can connect with you, or just having a business card, or just having the one next thing done. Because what I see so many people do is get stuck on like doing something perfectly, and it actually doesn't even create the result that they want. This is very specific to business, right? Don't spend all day on your business card. Don't spend all day on your website. Just don't. And then don't tell yourself like, oh, if I don't have a website, I must not be able to sign clients, right? So that's one example of all or nothing thinking. I've also seen this I was just coaching a client on this. Like she wanted to start doing webinars and she was learning how to specifically do webinars in the specific course. There's a specific way to do it. And I just asked her what would be the easiest way to do this. So this also has to do with like following the rules, quote unquote, right? Like if I can't follow the rules perfectly, or if I don't have all the things, then I'm just not going to be able to do it. Okay. And I really just want you to think about how can I, if I really want to do something, how can I just make it good enough? How can I just use what I have? And I found this to be true so often in my life. Whenever I just use what I have, I find out I have a lot of resourcefulness inside of me. For example, I wrote my book. I consider my book to be negative work, right? Like it's okay, but it's done. And so I would rather have my book done and published on Amazon and have it be okay than not have a book at all. And some of you are just not doing the book at all because you don't know how, you don't know where to start, you get stuck. Okay. So that's how I look at that. Number 1, all or nothing thinking. Number 2, problem with perfectionism is beating yourself up for mistakes or for perceived mistakes, right? So beating yourself up for anything that you deem as imperfect. I see this a lot. I've seen this in myself, right? I was originally a health coach and I was always beating myself up for not being at the right percentage of body fat. And for you, that might be like the right weight, the right pant size, right? Like beating yourself up for being where you are, beating yourself up for making mistakes, whether it's with your body image, whether it's with your business, whether it's in your relationship. And what this looks like is truly getting lost in a shame spiral, getting stuck in guilt, blaming yourself, blaming others, and really kind of getting stuck in this like low self esteem, low self-concept, and like getting stuck in the shame and guilt. And the difference between shame and guilt. So these are useful emotions for society, right? So guilt essentially says I made a mistake, I'm sorry, right? And we want to feel guilt if we are doing things in relationship, like we took advantage of somebody, we lied to somebody, like we hurt someone's feelings. The purpose of guilt is to get us to reconcile. Now, what I see is a lot of times people put themselves in a guilt spiral where the other person isn't even affected. Like it's not even actually that big of a deal. It's just the perfectionist person, like really putting themselves on a guilt trip for no reason, right? They're just trying to be perfect. And here's the thing, especially in relationships, you cannot make all the people happy all the time. This especially goes for parenting, right? Like your kids are just not going to be happy. And that doesn't mean that you're not a good mom. And I see this a lot of time with mom guilt. You're just going to do the best that you can do, and you're not responsible for other people's emotions, including your spouse, including your children, including your in laws. Okay. Now, the other part of this is shame. So, shame, there's never, ever a good case for shame. Now, shame is here for the extreme. So, I think of shame as a relational emotion that would have to do with something like you did something really bad, right? Like this is like let's say somebody is in jail for a crime of harming somebody in some way. They should feel shame so that they can rehabilitate, right? Like that would only be the only purpose of shame. Because shame is essentially saying, who I am is not good. Who I am is wrong. And this could only be true, right? If you did like a big crime to say, I don't want to do that, right? And this would also come with people who have ever struggled with addiction. They're like, I have shame about that pattern, right? But it doesn't mean innately I am wrong. It doesn't mean innately I am bad. It just means that pattern, that stuckness, that thing I was stuck in, I have shame about it, right? This came up for me. I used to binge eat all the time. And I had so much shame about like not being able to control my binge eating. But it was because I was doing extreme dieting as well, right? And I would get stuck in that cycle of like extreme dieting and then binge eating and like literally feeling shame, like no matter how skinny I was, no matter how fit I was, like I could never ever be good enough. So that's the type of shame that we're talking about. That's like, it's never useful. The only time it could be useful is to get somebody to rehabilitate, right? To say, this is a pattern I don't want to be in. And now I want to fix that pattern. But me, innately, I'm lovable, I'm whole, I'm divine, right? And then the last one is blame. Like blame very much goes with beating yourself up, blaming yourself, and then like kind of like victimizing yourself. Like very much like beat pity party, like all of that. It's just never going to be useful because when you're stuck in those vibrations are low vibrational emotions, they're not useful. They're not going to get you anywhere. So the solution to this is truly forgiving yourself. Just sitting there saying, I'm sorry. I love you. I forgive you. You're okay. I'm human. It's okay to make mistakes. And really just allowing yourself to let that emotion pass through your body, the guilt, the shame, the blame, let yourself feel it, but truly give yourself an hour to feel this and then move on. So many people are living in this like perpetual shame and guilt spiral that's going to get you stuck and not being able to reach your goals. Now, this is definitely a skill to learn how to do it, which is why I teach my clients EFT tapping, breath work, somatic processing, meditation, hypnosis, right? All of these are ways to feel your feelings and process through them. But we want to stop beating yourself up. We want to stop telling yourself these negative stories, these negative thoughts about your mistakes. Okay. You're human. You're allowed to make mistakes. Everyone's going to. All right. Number 3 problem with perfectionism, people pleasing. All right. So this also just looks like saying yes to everything. And you're kind of saying yes to everything because you're overestimating what's actually possible. And I do this a lot. Like I notice I do this because I have 2 dogs. The new dog that we got is a puppy. And I realize like I definitely have been underestimating how much time it takes to take care of the new puppy. She just came back from a dog trainer. I'm doing a lot of training with her. So like my morning routine just for the dogs is 2 hours. I feed the cats, I feed the dogs, I take each dog on a separate walk. And so I notice, right, like the way I use my time, I'm typically like overestimating what's possible for that day. I'm like, oh yeah, I actually didn't get to start my work day until 2 o'clock because, well, until 12 o'clock, I had client calls. But I think I had this expectation that I could get more done. And I realized early on in my business that I would say yes to like early appointments, not realizing that I couldn't do it. And I just couldn't do it because of my dogs. So I want you to just look at what are you saying yes to? Who are you trying to please? What are you trying to prove? Right? A lot of this is very much like, oh yeah, I can do it. Of course I can. I can fit it in. And again, if you make this mistake, don't beat yourself up for it, but it's definitely a learning opportunity to manage your schedule and to really manage what you say yes to and be able to deal with like people potentially being disappointed that you can't come to everything, that you can't be everywhere, and truly staying in alignment with your values and being able to say no to things. Okay. All right. Number 4. This is what I call better than syndrome. Okay. So perfectionism basically stems from, I mean, it stems from, think about it, it stems from the school system, at least for me. School system, right? Get straight A's, have perfect attendance, be the scholar athlete, right? Like be on varsity. And this is how I was raised. I think a lot of the millennial generation was raised this way. The Gen X generation was raised this way. Maybe a little less for the younger generations, but this better than was definitely like win the award, be the best, do your best, and your best means winning. And what this really is you being identified with the ego self. The ego self is the part of us that is looking for external rewards, external validation, and is very much always in comparison. Okay. Like, I want to be at the head of the class. I want to set the curve. I want to be the straight A student. I want to be the smartest. I want to be teacher's pet. And this makes sense because we were rewarded, right? We were rewarded growing up for being the good girl, being the good boy, doing the right thing, getting those straight A's, right? You might have gotten money or ice cream or a reward for getting straight A's on your report card. I just need to take a sip of water there. So, the solution here of this is really having compassion for yourself when you get into the ego. It's always going to come up, but just notice that it does not feel good to compare yourself to others. It never feels good. It doesn't feel good when you're the one saying, I'm better than, and it doesn't feel good to be the one saying they're better than me, right? Either way. So, the way I look at this is I look at this as divine perfection. You were created uniquely with your unique gifts, talents, personalities, life experience, and you're already good enough. You don't need to do anything to earn it. You don't need to do any proving. You can fully love and accept yourself, and you can fully love and accept another person without even getting stuck in comparison at all. So try that on for size. The next one is number 5, guaranteeing failure. So you won't realize this, but perfectionism is actually guaranteeing your failure. And here's why. You have such a fear of failure, right? Perfectionists have such a fear of failure, right? Because they're like, I want to get it right, that they will just not start things. They will just keep themselves from doing anything that they're not gonna. And I know this is true because this was me for so long. Like I'm a fairly good athlete. I can pick things up fairly well, but I remember when it's like in my 20s, I was not good at bowling. And I remember that I was dating this guy and he had like a younger sister, and his younger sister also had like a learning disability, and she had some like functional physical disabilities as well. And I remember we went bowling, and she had the bumpers up, and I remember like I went bowling. I did not have the bumpers up, and I was like getting so competitive because I was not good at bowling, and his little sister was better than me, and like I laugh at this, but like truly. I was upset because I was not good at bowling, and then I was like upset that like, again, I kept it inside to the best of my ability, but, like, it was so hard for me to be bad at bowling, to the point where I was just like, "I don't wanna go bowling anymore," right? So we also just lose out on the joy of life, like, just of, like, "Hey, I wanna do things for fun." For me, I was always like, "No, I need to be good at it, I need to win," right? And so what's happening is we're guaranteeing our failure on trying new things. We're guaranteeing failure on starting a business, starting a podcast, writing a book, and what's gonna happen at any point in time if you go after a goal is you will fail. Like, it's guaranteed that you will fail. But if you don't start, then you're 100% guaranteeing your failure ahead of time. You're guaranteeing that you will not live the life you wanna live, try new things, like, really go for it, right? You won't risk it. And instead, you'll just stay exactly where you are until you die. So, the solution to this is really seeing failure as a learning experiment, as an opportunity, as a growth experience, and actually knowing like I really went for it. Like I can be proud of myself for going for it, for doing the thing, for putting myself out there because there's only a small percentage of the populations who is actually going after their dream. So looking at it in that way of like I'm going after it, I'm doing the thing, that is better than not doing it at all. All right. Number 6, problem with perfectionism. Extreme goal getting. Okay, extreme goal getting. So what I look at this as is never stopping to enjoy the moment. So as soon as you hit a goal, you basically are on to the next thing. You hit the goal, then you're on to the next goal. This happens so often with my clients who are working to get to 100K. So when they start working with me, they might be making like $1,000 a month in their business. Then I work with them to double it. They get to 2K a month, then they get to 4K a month, then they get to 8K. And I notice each step of the way, they're like, never enough, never enough. I need more, I need more. And so I help them slow down. And I know because I've done this too. Like I help them slow down and realize the miracle that they've created. Like when you really think about starting a business, you have an idea and then you have a service or a product that you say, I could help people with this. And then you go out and you tell people about it. You have conversations, you do sales calls, sales consultations, you do consults, you market yourself, and then people pay you money. And it's a freaking magical miracle of capitalism and freedom that we have in this modern society. So I want you to really, really think about that and slow yourself down, especially when it comes to money or writing a book or starting the podcast or getting a speaking gig, like whatever the thing is, like bask in that experience, bask in it, be with it. You can still set a new goal, but I noticed that like this extreme goal getting is all about like worthiness, never feeling good enough, never feeling happy, like chasing this high and noticing that you'll never actually get there if you don't slow down to celebrate it, to be with it, to be present, to be like, wow, I did this thing. And then another thing is like go back and look at your past 10 years. Like, what have I achieved? What thing am I living now that I wished for at one point in time? Right. So that's really what I want you to think about. And then the last one, number 7, high anxiety. So perfectionism is really a scared, anxious person. And I know you don't want to hear this because I didn't want to hear it. But perfectionism really is there to protect us. Like it's there to be like, oh, people will love me if I'm perfect. People will love me if I look the right way, if I say the right thing. Right. So it's driven from this like really deep desire to be accepted, to be loved, and to be safe. That's really what it is. And so I want you to realize that what's happening is this is all fear and anxiety that's driving perfectionism. And then what also happens here is this ends up leading to burnout and depression, right? So it's like if we keep setting the goal higher, if we have high anxiety, if we need to be loved and accepted, if we need to be perfect in order to be loved and accepted, we're going to keep doing all the things, saying yes to all the things. It's going to lead to burnout. We're going to be overthinking everything, overanalyzing everything. And then that's going to lead to depression. Because guess what? We cannot please everyone. You cannot control outcomes. No matter what, if you go through life, you're going to have a negative experience, no matter how perfect you try to be. You cannot control life. Life is 50-50. There's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. There's going to be good seasons, they're going to be bad seasons. But when you spend your whole life trying to control everything by being perfect, you end up with burnout and depression because you realize, okay, I actually can't control any of this. And I'm creating a boatload of pressure for myself. And the nervous system is not designed for that pressure. So here's what I want you to do. This is the first few steps to solving it. And in the next episode, which will be part 2, we'll really dive into the solutions for perfectionism. But I want you to realize just having the awareness, just like listening to this and sensing and feeling like, yep, I see myself in this. And if you can hold yourself here and just have the awareness, this is the first step. First step is always awareness of saying, oh, I see how maybe in the past perfectionism served me. Maybe it did help me get through grade school and high school. Maybe it helped me get through college or earn my doctorate or my master's. But now as I'm running my business or now as I'm living life as a parent, I'm noticing that this isn't actually serving me anymore. So the next step would be openness, right? Like I'm open to changing this because this is not a personality. Like personalities are not fixed. Okay. This is just your practiced way of thinking. And when you start to look at, okay, is the way that I'm thinking creating a desired result? Do I want this anxiety? Do I want burnout? Do I want depression? Do I want to never feel good enough? Do I want to be comparing myself to everyone? Do I want to be saying yes to everything? Do I want shame, guilt, blame? Do I want to like be in this all or nothing where I can't even get myself to do anything? I just procrastinate. If the answer is no, and you're like, you know what? Actually, I would like to change all of these things. I want you to know it's possible. You can. You can change every single one of these things because all it is a practice way of thinking. And it's just there to keep you safe. It's just there because your brain created a pattern and was like, oh, we get rewards when we're perfect. We get rewards when we get straight A's. And it only works until it doesn't work. So you can focus on excellence instead of perfection. But what I'd rather you focus on is just good enough. Like this good enough is good enough. And I use this when I wrote my book. Good and done is better than perfect and undone. Another way to look at this, I always say this, is it's not about being perfect. It's about practicing. And we want to practice your potential, the potential self, the version of you that has inner peace, that can be calm, that doesn't feel guilty for resting, that enjoys life, that doesn't have anything to prove. You can still go after goals, but you're not going after them because you have something to prove. Okay, so this is what I want you to start thinking about with perfectionism. And if you'd like to do some more work on this together, book a free consultation call with me. You can head to my website right now. It's www.camykennedy.vip. That'll take you directly to the booking link to book a free consultation. Let's just talk about all the ways perfectionism, procrastination, anxiety comes up for you. Let's just talk it all out. There's so much power in being vulnerable. Listen, I get it. I've done all of these things, which is why I coach perfectionists on these things because I'm always being coached all the time on these same things. And really, what I want for you is to have a deep sense of inner peace, a deep sense of self love and acceptance where you feel okay. Like you feel like I'm good enough. And I'm going after these goals because it's fun, because it's expansive, because I want to become this conscious version of me who loves myself and who increases her capacity and who goes after these goals that have an impact on the community and the world. So that's how I want you to start thinking about your goals and the way that you do things. Always, always coming from a deep sense of self love and of service, not of proving. Okay. So take this episode. Let me know what you thought. Book a free consult. I'll talk to you soon.